Welcome to the Glassworking shop. The pieces that I made in the last video came out pretty good. They're not perfectly uniform, but they're close enough and they'll work just fine. And so the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to make the core that is going to be in the center, and then the little guys that I made last time will go around in a ring around the core. Now, there's a number of ways to make this kind of a core. I could, well, first of all, let me tell you what I'm doing. I'm using a red dot in the center, North Star, let's see, cherry, I think it is, North Star cherry, surrounded by North Star poppy, which is getting a little oranger now. They're not very good on their color consistency, but I kind of like it. It's a pretty good reddish orange. So it'll be a cherry core with a thick poppy ring surrounding a rather small core. And yes, I could hot stripe thick stripes over a thin core, but I've got a different trick. I can assemble them cold and then squeeze them together. So that's what I'm going to do. So I've got the pieces cut to length. I'm making a 3 1/4 inch piece, and I've got the pieces cut to length, and they're kind of, let me get over on this camera, they're sitting here in the assembly fixture, cold, obviously I'm holding it, cold and cut to length, 3 1/4 inches, wrapped with stainless safety wire. And now I'm gonna heat up one of my pre-made punties. Probably put the other one in the kiln to give it a little head start on getting heated up. And then pick this guy up and squeeze it together. I'm using fixed squeezing dies in this case because I happen to have the squeezer set up for fixed dies at the moment, and it's a tiny bit easier to just use it the way it is than to put in the iris dies. But also, the squeezer really is not a major part of this operation. The operation really is mostly handwork. The squeezer just helps to tag the pieces together and get them kind of sort of roughly stuck. The final shape is not going to be a nice hexagon, so I don't care about a sharp cornered hexagon. I'm making a round piece. And so this will work just fine for the job that needs to be done. And let's get this guy a little bit hotter here. This is a process that I've used many times in the past, and it turns out to be a fairly convenient and quick trick for making a dot in the center of a fairly thick outer ring. So I'm using El Cheapo reading glasses and overcover safety glasses because old guy bad eyes. Need a little bit of prescription assistance here. So this guy looks like I've got my punty just about hot enough. Now I'm going to preheat the ends of the rods. When I'm doing this method, when I'm doing the cold assembly method with more elaborate cane that is more difficult, more complex, more potentially troublesome, I'll preheat them in the kiln. But when I'm sticking together manufactured color rods, I don't need to be quite as careful. So I can just stick them in cold. heat them up and stick them on. Three and a quarter inches is a really good size. I know that a lot of marine makers prefer working shorter, and I've been taught that 2 inches is the preferred size. Another advantage of keeping the rods cold is that I can kind of hold the other end. When I'm doing a hot assembly, well, can't touch the hot end. So this way I can kind of support the thing a little as I make sure that I'm nice and stuck and that everything is a uniform diameter. And then put it over into Mr. NQALHA. Get it back on center. Then the first thing I'm going to do is just get the ends stuck together, because right now it's somewhat unstable. It's just held in place with the stainless safety wire, and in order for the thing to be stabilized, I have to weld the far end together so it'll tag. Now, what I don't want to do in this operation is to fully and completely weld the back end together. I want to give it a little bit of a chance for the air to get out when I start squeezing it together. So I try to get it to tag together well enough that it won't just fly apart, but not fully and completely welded. So that is probably stuck well enough that I can remove the safety wire supports. And of course, at this point, everything is pretty unstable. So probably want to get it hot enough to tag together as soon as I can. Using a oxidizing flame, a fairly cold flame, these red cadmium colors are super sensitive, and it's real easy to overheat them. So just trying to gently heat them up hot enough to tag while not overheating. Using the Delta Mag flame, not because I want a hotter flame, but because I want more surface area covered, and having that large torch face going, I can get a larger, colder flame. And try to just get uniform heat. looks like I may have spoken too soon about the fixed size squeezer dies. Maybe I should have used the iris dies for this part of the process, because I'm discovering that my smallest squeezer dies are right on the edge of not working. I think they will work, but it does appear to be more or less under control. It's slightly challenging trying to manage a 3 1/4 inch long piece, but according to my calculations that I made ahead of time, I need this amount, this number of cubic inches of glass to move on to the next step. And as I said in the previous video, this is something that as I get the process a little more under control and a little more systematic, I'm starting to try to figure out how many cubic inches of final material do I need when everything's finished, and how many cubic inches of prep do I need to make, and how do I account for the various different losses, because quite a lot of glass is lost in the process. Glasswork is very wasteful. For those who don't already know this, you throw away a lot of glass. You're lucky if 50% makes it into the final piece. An awful lot of it ends up in unusable ends, unusable pieces. In the past, I would just start out and make some stuff and then just see what I could do with what I had. And sometimes I got lucky and I ended up, oh yeah, that fits just fine, I got plenty. And then other times I'd end up in a situation where, wow, I wish I had 3 more inches. And I know there's a joke in that somewhere. I know there's a joke in there somewhere, but I'm talking about glass. So, just starting to see if I can make this process a little more under control, a little more systematic. Of course, I'm an engineer and a machinist and would ideally like to see the whole thing precise and planned and under control, but you know, glass is glass. Glass, as the glassworkers say, glass has an attitude. And sometimes we only think it's under control. Sometimes it does what it decides it's going to do. Of course, it all depends on skill level, and I can't claim to be even close to a master yet. I'm starting to get this guy rounded up. And once again, at this stage of the process, making the sub-assemblies, these pieces don't need to be perfect. Although I'd like them to be perfect, I'm always searching for perfection. Always trying to make every project a little bit better than the one before. By the time this all gets done being squeezed and smashed and jammed together, little inconsistencies will hopefully work themselves out, and even if this piece was made perfectly, there's a lot of squeezing and smashing and flowing and all kinds of stuff yet to come as the journey continues from idea to final product. I'm trying as hard as I can to avoid overheating and degrading this color. I'm seeing a few tiny little sparkles, and it's hard to know if they're trapped air being released or a small amount of boiling. But I'm still being very aware of what's going on, trying very hard to keep it all under control. And yeah, it was a kind of a decision that I made to hot fuse the core before putting the outside rods on. I could have very easily put the outside rods on cold and then just done the whole thing in one operation. But it's all about trying new things. It's all about experimenting and seeing, well, what if I do it this way? What's it going to look like? What if I do it that way? And most of my pieces in the past, I would have done a full cold assembly. But for today, just wondering, wonder what happens if I do it this way. I'm sure it'll be different. Whether it's better or not remains to be seen, but I have no doubt that this method will produce a different result. Of course, trying to work the punty end is always challenging, because if I get it too hot, it loses stability. So I think what I'm going to do now, I'm kind of making this up as I go. I stopped talking so I could think a little bit, try to decide what it is I'm going to do next. I may actually try to switch axes here. I'm thinking is, I've never done this before, so I have no idea if it's going to work or not. Just cut off that construction punty with the big moil where I built the thing, switch to a smaller punty, and then clean up the far end. And yeah, looks like it actually worked pretty nice. And now I don't have to go to the cold saw, because when it comes time to do the next step, you just nip off that little fin punty on one end and not have to cut off a larger piece of glass. So I'm going to let this guy, put it in the kiln for a few minutes, let it cool. Not going to do a full annealing cycle. I've been warned by an expert marine maker that too many kiln cycles are bad for glass, and I've had problems with the glass breaking down and degrading after a number of operations have been performed. So I think I will be a little bit more careful. So I'm going to turn off the camera for a while and give this guy a little bit of time in the kiln to equalize, then cool it without a full annealing cycle, just kind of cool it in a fiber blanket, and then come back and turn the camera back on and see if I can assemble this thing and see if I can get some kind of a cool result. So, see you later.